Well, here at the Flow News 24 desk and on our Flow Morning Show, we talked to Ricky Lambert about a range of topics, and today we're going to have a look at an article that emerged last Friday about wind farms and fines that have been given in relation to the power outage back in 2016. Joining me to talk about those fines and the ramifications of it and wind technology in general is Ricky Lambert from the Flow News 24 desk. Hi Ricky, how are you?
Good, thank you.
It's a really interesting federal court fine that's come out. 3 companies have received fines from the federal court in relation to the 2016 SA blackout.
That's right. The total fines are running at about $2.6 million so far across 3 wind farm operators. There's one they're still pursuing in the court for that blackout in 2016, which was a focal point of the state election campaign, actually, after that Stephen Marshall rode into office, partly on the frustration with Labor's handling of the electricity grid in SA. But we've got some broader national figures we want to bring you as well about why this is really important.
Okay, the operators, 2 South Australian wind farms, they've been ordered to pay $1.6 million in penalties for breaching national electricity rules in this action that has been taken. Pacific Hydro Clements Gap, which is up near Port Broughton, was hit with a $1.1 million fine, while Hornsdale was hit with a $500,000 fine. That's up near Jamestown. The 2 judgments this week follow a $1 million fine imposed on the Snowtown wind farm and stage 2 of that wind farm back in December of last year. The court found that the operator had operated for 3 years without it protecting its settings into the grid. And then there is a 4th SA wind farm that is being listed for a penalty hearing in August. This is astonishing that we've got, it's not one wind farm, but it is actually a number of wind farms that have been involved here that the federal court is looking to prosecute.
Well, critically, when there was a high wind blowing at that time when the blackout occurred and took out transmission lines, the energy regulator found that 9 of 13 wind farms in South Australia were online, but they were switched off. And that was why they're being fined, is the energy rules require them to pull their weight on the team. You know, they're this glamour boy that runs around in the forward line taking speccies in the energy debate, but when they had one job, and that was to chip in when the team was down, and they didn't do their job.
No defensive action, I think, is what you might be saying. But looking at this at the wider level, the AEMO in its findings has been very direct about this, and it then leads us to the question about this technology. And I know that we've heard an enormous amount about the federal government and 2030 or 2050 or whichever date about being carbon neutral in the future, but the wind farms and pulling their weight, the figures don't seem to add up to being carbon neutral by 2050 and certainly not carbon neutral by 2030.
No, if you like, I'll use that analogy of the footy team. If Wind was this player taking speccies on the forward line and his little mate Solar, he was there trying to wax off of him with handballs, the players who are doing the real effort is coal. Black coal 52% and brown coal 18%. In a 12-month figures, 70% of the heavy lifting in Australia's energy mix is coal.
Yeah, maybe the fullback and the back pocket are actually our best players. And this is why it's interesting, because solar in the last 12 months has, for the energy grid, has put 4% in. Wind has put 11%. Between the 2 major renewable energies in Australia, they have contributed 15%. That means that there's 85% of the heavy lifting being done by something else. And it's interesting because coal actually is responsible for 70% of that heavy lifting. Yet now, when we've had all this energy discussion, we've had a lot of money put into solar and wind farms, we're at 15%.
Yeah, if you look on this other topic we've talked about on the land, about agriculture lifting its production by a third to reach 100 billion by 2030 versus a net zero target of getting to net zero carbon by 2050. I'd be backing the farmers on this one. They'll get to that target much more easily than there's no way we're going to get to that energy mix by 2050.
All right, so the governments have helped invest, say, for the last 20 years into the wind and solar. So with that investment, if they've for 20 years got to 15%. And we got a lot of wind farms. Let's not get away from the fact that if we proliferate 5 times the current number of wind farms, we would get to, say, 50% for wind farms to be the major renewable, and solar farms, if we had 5 times where they are today, we would be at 20%. That would be then the 70% that coal now produces. We're talking here of that being between 50 and 100 years away, and then you have to look at the proliferation of the technology across every hill and across flat plains of farmland of these, if you like, solar and wind panels.
When you look at this energy mix on the AEMO dashboard, what's not there is hydrogen, and there's just this wing and a prayer idea that suddenly hydrogen might be a solution. But let's be clear, when you hear politicians talking about renewables and hydrogen, these are not technologies that are capable of replacing baseload power at the moment, and are not going to be in the next 20 years. Batteries are a minuscule percentage of the national energy mix at the moment. It's just going to take an eye-watering amount of money to switch off of the coal that we're reliant upon.
And the popularism around even, say, Angus Taylor's project in the Snowy Hydro, 8% of Australia's power, mainly in Tasmania, comes from hydroelectricity, and maybe another 2% out of Snowy Hydro when that project is finalised. So again, where we're investing a lot of money in renewable technologies, we're actually not getting the benefit, and still the coal reserve seems to be the way in which, at least for the next, what looks to me to be 50 years, and possibly even longer, are going to be still a very important part of our energy mix.
Well, the reality here is the government is having its cake and eating it, because what it's doing is it's going to all the metropolitan seats in Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide. We're going to be based on renewables, and everyone goes, yay, thank you, government. And then in Queensland, they say, we back your coal industry, and they win all those important seats in Queensland as well. So they're going to keep coal in the mix. If you like, it's the battery of our energy grid, but they're going to keep pretending that they're actually going to get to getting rid of coal as well.
All right, black coal at 52% of your last 12 months of energy in Australia, and that's since not changing. In fact, the figures today, that coal is still a significant player today. Every day of the year it becomes the most significant player. It's a very interesting energy mix. It's one that to get to renewables by 2050 is simply, according to the statistics at least, that doesn't look possible.